There we
Hey
go.
guys, it's Jenny Wolek with Keller Realty, the Wolek Group in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am so excited to introduce you to my friend Chad Taylor from Kansas City. Hi,
Hello,
Chad.
everybody. Good to see you.
He was making fun of me there for a minute when I pushed record. So, Chad, we have known each other for quite a while now because we get to be in the same mastermind groups so many times over the
Time and
years.
time again. Yeah.
Yes. And our growth has continued to grow, which is good.
hmm
And why don't you share with everyone how long you've been in the business, what your production looked like last year, what your goals are for this year, and what your team looks like,
Okay. So last
and where you're
year,
located, and all that good
where I'm located, right? All this stuff. Okay. So the big metro would be we're in Kansas City. I'm actually in Prairie Village, Kansas, which sounds very Little House on the Prairie. It's just right there on the state line between Kansas and Missouri.
Yeah.
Our team currently is myself, my wife, who's been my business partner for 9 of my 14 years actively selling. Of course, before then, she was behind the scenes. So we've been partners for 14 years, but actively selling for 9 years. And at this point, we have 2 administrative team members. And that's how we ended the year last year. And we did 108 units.
Good.
We actually took a step back slightly, which I'm okay with. I am slowing down and taking a step back so that we can take a leap forward in growth through hiring. I've been really focused on my bench of talent and finding the right candidates that really want to see us explode, right? You laugh because it sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
So this year we'll do 150 units in sales. Last year I closed around $30 million in volume, although I don't track volume. I do more, how many families we get to help. And then this year we will end the year with a minimum 7 team members and as many as 9, depending upon what talent shows up.
Wow, that's a lot of growth.
Yes, it is. So
Very excited for you.
and I'm excited about it. I mean, that's the whole point is I started fourth quarter last year, really identifying talent and planting lots of seeds and being as purposeful about that as I am about finding listings.
Right. Well, that's actually what we're going to talk about today is how you have mastered working with sellers. And we know that we don't just take listings. The goal is to sell them.
Right.
And everything is about pricing. So
Everything is.
I believe it was last year you were on stage at Mastermind and you got to share kind of your system and your tips and your scripts for this. So I'm just going to let you dive right into your spiel if you want to go for it.
Sure. No, and it's funny. Yesterday I was at Win with Sellers, and they were talking about how 80% of servicing listings is pricing. And I agree completely. I think it may be more than that. I think 80 may be conservative.
Right.
I have to give credit where credit is due. So I was at it may have been Win with Sellers or a similar class with Matt Fedek. He was the instructor. And so what I'm about to share is something that he shared with me. And it was one of those deals where you leave the class and you say, oh my gosh, that was worth the price of admission. Like that one nugget absolutely changed every way or everything I look about, how to price. So what Jenny's referring to is when it comes to pricing listings, I used to get really intimidated because my business partner had like this gargantuan Excel spreadsheet that he would use to break down everything about a home and all of these comps. And it would just make me nauseous to think about going through all of that because I don't have the patience. Nor do I have the wherewithal to have that kind of a conversation. And so I went to this class with Matt Fedek and he shared this, and this is what I do currently, and it's changed my business. So when I sit down with a seller to talk about value, what I'll do is I will cherry pick listings that are the most similar to theirs. I typically only share 10 to 12 listings when it comes to current active inventory, things that are under contract and things that have sold. I don't go any further back than the last 6 months for sold data. I try to keep it really recent and very relevant. So if it's a split level home, because a lot of my homes that I sell are anywhere from 1940s to 1960s, then I'm going to use other split levels. I'm not going to pull 2 stories and ranches. And so I cherry pick those listings. I print them up in a client form so that they can see, just like if they were out looking at homes with you, Jenny, you print them up a client form with all the information. And I print off 2 copies, especially if it's husband and wife or 2 partners. And so I hand it to them, right? And I'll say, I want you to take a look at this and take your seller hat on and put your buyer hat on. So if you're a buyer out looking in today's market and you looked at all of these homes and what's recently sold, and then you looked at your home, right? and you're in love with but you really need to know what's a fair price for it. After looking at all these comps, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to tell me what would be the price that would cause your home to sell based on everything you're seeing. And I'll tell them, I want you to take your time. I'm going to sit here. A lot of times I'll leave the room. Mm-hmm. And then I'll kind of spy on them, like from the side of the glass conference room that I use, or I'll stand there and just kind of sip on my hot tea because I'm like an old man and watch them go through these comparables. And it's pretty powerful because I give them their own copies and I go through and highlight things that I want them to see. So if their kitchen needs updating, right, I've highlighted all the ones that have updated kitchens. And we'll discuss their square footage. If the other ones are larger, I've highlighted that, right? Or if it's a 3-car versus a 2-car, all those kinds of things that will have an impact on the value. Right. So then once they've looked at it and said, okay, and I'll go, are you comfortable with what you think would be the price that would cause your home to sell? And they'll say yes. And so then I'll hand each of them a blank piece of paper and I'll have my own piece of paper, right? And so I will write on my piece of paper and fold over and I'll say, okay, I just wrote what the markets told me is the price that will cause your home to sell on my piece of paper. You two do the same and do not show each other your answer. Mm-hmm. And so then they turn away from each other, right? And they're like back to back and they're writing their number, or one of them's really hesitant to write their number, that kind of a thing. But I'll let that play out. And then I'll say, okay, one of you are going to go first, but I haven't cheated. I've already written mine down. So who wants to go first? And so one of them will go. And so they'll flip. And let's say it's, I think the home is worth $300,000, right? And so I've got that on my paper. So one of them flips and it says $325,000 and it's the husband, right? And then the wife flips hers and it says $300,000, right? She'll turn to him and smack him and go, whack. I told you I was right once I've turned mine over and showed them that it's $300,000. And all of a sudden she's like, I told you so. And that conversation it's pretty magical because number one, I know who my ally is as it pertains to pricing. Number two, I have not told them where to price their home. They have chosen a price that will cause the home to sell. So in most cases, the high person, they know they're high. And sometimes even the first thing they'll say is, I knew I was on the higher side. This is what I wanted. Right. And then the other person is like, well, but that doesn't matter. What you want doesn't matter. He already talked about that. It's about the price that will get it sold. And so it's shortened my listing consultations used to take an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. Now I'm down to about an hour unless they come in and I know that they're hiring us. And then that exercise, I'm probably in and out in 45 minutes.
Mm. Well, a couple things that I picked up on in your story. First off, it's brilliant. It really is. So thanks to Matt for sharing it too. And thank you for sharing it with all of us, because that's what we do at this company. We R&D, we share everything that we learn. You said a couple things. Are all of your listing appointments in your office?
Yes. So I would be lying if I said all. There's probably one or two every now and then. If it's, I'll make exceptions for sometimes if someone's very elderly and it's difficult for them to get out, then I'll make an exception for them. Okay. Other than that, if they've got kids, I've got kids. I need them in my office for protected time. That doesn't mean I won't say don't bring your kids, but if they do, I've got iPad, I've got coloring books, I've got everything there to distract their kids so that I can have focus time. So, and yes, every appointment's in the office. So have you seen the home yet? Before? Yes. Okay. Yes. So I do a two-step. So I do and this is honestly something that they shared yesterday in the class that I agree with 100%. So I do a listing preview appointment, and I'll go in and preview the property for about 15 minutes. And I'll want the seller, when I go there, to show me things that they've done that they feel will have a direct impact on value. Mm-hmm. And so number one, they're not just walking me through doing a silly tour like they talked about in the class yesterday of this is the living room, this is the kitchen, right? They're saying these are the things that we've done. And so if they're naming things that are not of consequence as it pertains to value, then I know I've got that to work on, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll walk me through, and so I'll make notes then that day. Then I'll come back and complete my market analysis and then meet them at the office. The power of it is when I'm competing with someone, 99% of the time the other agents are doing a one-step process. And so it's very easy when they say, well, now why are you coming out twice? The other agents are coming out only once. And my script is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I honestly feel it would be reckless of me to try to assign a value to your home without seeing it first. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. And usually they'll say, well, yeah, I guess so. And so I've just gotten them to agree not only that my style is the preferred style, but the other agents are reckless.
I love that. And I totally agree with you. And I do that most of the time because it's quite simple. How am I supposed to properly price your home when I've never seen it? So
there's no way. There's no way. How many times have you gone into a property and you had an idea on value and then you show up and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to backpedal. I'm nowhere near, or I'm way low. How can I adjust this on the spot?
Yeah.
It looks horrible.
When you just started this whole video here today, sharing that 80, probably 90% of our marketing is the price. So it's that important that we price it right.
Right.
I love that. And another thing that you said in your script to them, you say, we are looking for the price that will cause your home to sell. Now, to them, are they clearly understanding list price? Are you calling them the same thing? Do they say, oh, we need room to negotiate? Or is that already in your listing consultation before you get to this place?
We talk about that because I will share with them that my strategy is to price a home always at fair market value or slightly less. That's their choice. Mm-hmm. So it's either at fair market value or slightly less, because I just will not take an overpriced listing. Because I'm going to drive that seller crazy and they're going to drive me crazy. And it doesn't work because I stay up at night if my listings aren't selling. And so I need to have the right price. And I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, I wanted to share. So prior to using this system, my list price to sell price percentage was about 98%. Mm-hmm. In our market currently, it's 95%. So I usually stayed about 3% over, right? As of right now, as of the last 12 months, 90% of our listings sell with no price adjustments, on average in 4 days for 102.8% of the original list price. The 10% of the time that we do have to make a price adjustment, it's 1, and we still sell for 100.1% of the new list price, or about 96% of the original list price, because usually it takes about a 4% adjustment to get in front of a new buyer audience. So our sellers just get a completely different experience when it comes to pricing now than they did before.
Well, let me pick your brain on this.
Okay.
There are lots of newer agents that maybe don't have the confidence that you have or the experience in sharing the stats, because you've got your own statistics you can share, and that overcomes all the objections with your clients. So I'm a newer agent, and I would try out this pricing strategy you've just suggested, and they still are off, and I don't have the skills. What would you recommend?
As far as if you didn't have your own numbers to share, mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
When I teach Ignite or when I teach courses to new agents, I always tell them that I think that there's a misnomer to say that if you don't have your own stats, you can't back up what you're presenting. Because if you know your market intimately, you can back it up. If you know the comparables intimately and you know the market trends and you know absorption rate, you know days on market, if you know all those things, it becomes a non-issue. When I learned those things, I got in the business in 2004 and thought I was God's gift to real estate. And then the market crashed and I realized either I needed to get good or get out. And so I decided I'm going to get good. And so I started learning the numbers and learning what was relevant and learning the tools of my trade. And then all of a sudden I noticed that I didn't get objections on commissions ever. I noticed that I didn't get objections on price, but every now and then. And I was still a newer agent. It was just because I learned the language of my business and I made sure that I understood better than anyone else out there where the market was headed, because I wasn't going to let a market shift kick me in the tail again. So for newer agents, that's my advice is don't lean on the old advice of you don't have your own numbers to back it up. And I don't even think you have to lean on the fact that your market center is successful. Go out and learn the market trends. When you speak that language to sellers, they assume you have sold tons of houses. So just let them assume that. Don't give them the opportunity to think otherwise.
Right. And I think the number one thing for agents, all of us to know is the language of real estate. And if you don't know what that means, it could simply be knowing the average days on market in your previous month. And in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we get every month, it's a month lag time behind, every month from our association, our realtor association, we get those stats. So You can easily see average days on market and list price to sales price, average sales price, and absorption rate. Know those numbers, and then as you start having your own numbers and your numbers beat those numbers, that's a really simple way to overcome the objection, especially with commission.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as you can see, I will get you 98% of list price versus the average of 97%. So there's the 1% you're asking me to come off.
Right. I mean, nowadays it's pretty funny because with the average list price to sell price in our market at 95, and ours is at 102.8. I tell them, if you can see, I'm more than free.
Yeah. Pay me more.
Exactly. So I'm more than free for you, and that's the benefit of working with our team. But I agree 100%. I think that knowing honestly, I use a tool called Broker Metrics that I look at literally twice a week, if not. I'm kind of a geek, maybe 5 times a week. And I look at absorption rates per week, because what it shows me is demand going up, is demand going down? Because that way I know that my value to a seller is accurate pricing. At the end of the day, they want to know my price is accurate.
And why is it important for us to take listings?
What's the best? I mean, it's by far the most leveraged piece of the business. I mean, I did it, honestly. I went out starting listing FSBOs in the beginning because I didn't know any better. And I know because of my natural style that I, unlike you, are limited socially. I have a social battery. I'm not socially awkward. However, I do much better with sellers. And what I've learned is I can handle a lot more sellers than a typical buyer's agent can handle, and I work better hours. Mm-hmm. And because now that I've established a value proposition for sellers, I get to set those hours, and I don't do, really evening appointments very much anymore. And I really don't do that many weekends, maybe a Saturday here and there. But on average, sellers are willing to meet with me in the office during business hours during the week. And that's not the case if you're in a low inventory market and you're a buyer's agent, right? And a listing pops on a Friday at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
And you got to go, you've got your fiduciary to your client to go find them the great home. So to me, it's a gimme. I know some people think listings are boring, and I think they're crazy, but that's the beauty of this business, right?
Yeah. You'll laugh all the way to the bank, won't you?
That's right.
I am so honored to know you, and I look forward to seeing you really, really, really soon. How can someone send you a referral if they have one to your area, and any other contact information you want to share?
Sure. No, like give out phone number and email and stuff like that. Sure. Give out all that. Okay. Yeah. So my direct line is 913-825-7540. My email address is Chad, my first name, at taylormadekc.com. So TAYLORMADEKC.com. And I would love to assist any Kansas City sellers or buyers that you have. Yes, we'll help buyers. But yeah, reach out to us. We'd love to help you any way we can.
Well, you are so awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you so much. Have a great day. If you need anything from me, my number is 918-706-9845. Bye.
You're the best.
Bye. See you, Chad.
Bye-bye.